whakataka te tūru, whakataka te ki te tonga, uta kia tara ki he tia, he hauhu, ti he ma. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay. So I declare the meeting open and ask for apologies. I think that we've just got lateness from Mayor Foster and lateness and early departure from Deputy Mayor Free. Sorry? Oh, it's an absence for Mayor Foster. So do I have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Pannett. And we'll just vote the appropriate way. And I guess that went through unanimously. It did. Oh, we've just got people signing in. Just wondering if anybody's got any conflict of interest declarations to be made. I don't see any, so we can move on to the confirmation of the minutes. I move the confirmation of the minutes for the 18th of May and that they've been circulated and taken as confirmed and accurate. Thanks, Councillor Matthews. I'll put that, and if we can just vote on that in the appropriate way. And I'm assuming that that will be carried. And so there are no items that are not on the agenda, and so we're going to kick off our public participation with Jodie Seabright on behalf of the Wellington Car Club. And Jodie, it's really lovely to see you here in person. And you guys do a fantastic job within our motorsport industry to put Wellington on the map. So.
Able to present to the meeting. As you're aware, we've got road closure applications in, and Maria had asked us to identify how we can assist the council to reduce emissions and work towards those goals. We very quickly identified that there are a significant number of initiatives that motorsport undertakes, so we thought this was a good opportunity to be able to highlight those to the council and show what we're doing as a sport and individually. So I'll start off. Our club was first established in 1936. We've enjoyed cooperative and collaborative relationship with the council over the last 80 years or so to run many motorsports through the city, motorsport events through the city. Over the time, the suitability and availability of venues has meant that we now only have two venues left, that being Alexandra Road and Shelley Bay. We've run these annually, Alexandra Road since 1958 and Shelley Bay since 1992. And these events have a long-standing tradition and are both rounds of the Wellington Motorsport Association Seal Sprint Series. Far from being one-off events, they form a highly important part of the motorsport fabric and competition within the region. Motorsport is important to our region, where a 2021 report by Ernst Young determined that motorsport is worth $1.2 billion to the New Zealand economy each year. Of that, approximately $35 million is spent in the Wellington region. But this isn't to suggest that there is a trade-off between economic benefit versus environmental impact. Far from it. As identified in the brief report we prepared for the council, as a sport, motorsport is undertaking practical steps to reduce and mitigate fossil fuel use and emissions. This is an international, national and local basis. The actions highlighted within the report are just a few examples. There are many other actions across different disciplines within the motorsport community currently underway. A key development has been the release of regulations to allow electric vehicles to compete in all motorsport events. This demonstrates that motorsport, in essence, has always been fuel agnostic. Many competition vehicles currently run on ethanol, which is significantly lower emissions than petrol or diesel. Hybrid technology has been in use for many years, and now EV technology is able to compete directly with internal combustion engines. This means that our events are uniquely placed to be able to demonstrate side by side how effective EVs are in real-world conditions. We see that this will be able to be used as a catalyst for discussion and change by providing venues that allow these direct comparisons to be made and observed. To remove these events removes an important opportunity that includes publicity and media opportunities to show how our city is embracing low emission technology. The club is keen to continue to work proactively with the council to ensure our collective objectives are achieved. Our purpose is to provide safe and enjoyable motorsport competition for our members and the wider public. The desire by the council to reduce fossil fuel emissions is well stated. Obviously, a full conversion from fossil fuel use won't happen overnight, just as change in the wider community takes time. But by allowing our events to continue with the inclusion of low emission technology, including EVs, together we'll be able to develop and lead those conversations to encourage change. We aren't able to guarantee any level of participation or percentage of electric vehicles that might compete at any one event. However, we can work to encourage participation and provide opportunities to low emissions that otherwise wouldn't exist in the wider community. An example of this has been a young chap by the name of Sebastian Steele, who is currently building a fully electric vehicle in Wellington as his test, and these events would be an obvious place that he could test the car that he's currently building. He's competed at our events before, and there's a YouTube link on our Facebook page that shows the work that he's doing. In the report provided, there's links to work that Hayden Patton is doing, which was the first EV in the country to be authorised for motorsport use. So there's a number of things that our sport as a whole are doing. So that's the end of it, short and sweet. So I'm happy to take any questions anybody might have.
Are there any questions, councillors? No, Jodie, I think you've been really clear, and thank you. It's also great to see the relationship between your organisation and council. I'd particularly like to thank Maria for fostering that relationship and ensuring the lines of communication are kept open. Oh, Councillor Panner.
I will just say something. Can I just congratulate you on your attempts to sustainability, because I struggle with this one a little bit, to be honest. So I'm really grateful that you are looking at that. I guess the question is really about it's the car racing as part of a wider culture around car driving, and I think that's just where I struggle a bit. But nevertheless, I presume you've got, so the question really is that you've got some quite strong safety considerations in place. And so this is just something for people who really like to drive fast under a very controlled environment.
Yes, so we run to a very strict set of regulations provided by Motorsport New Zealand. These are a lot stricter than what councils and others require us to run under. So we need to take out a permit from Motorsport New Zealand to allow us to run. There's a book about that thick of safety regulations that all the cars, competitors, organisers have to abide by. So one of the things that we do promote often is that people running around the streets do so in order to thumb their nose at authority, whereas people that want to compete and have a desire to compete to their fullest extent will do that in a controlled environment with all the safety features. So we have engaged many times to encourage people to come into the controlled fold, if you like, and then they can run at permanent circuits, they can run on gravel roads, they can run on whatever surface, but it is a particularly controlled, safe environment. So for instance, with these events, we've got marshals down the length of the course that can see every part of the course. So if there's an incident or an animal or anything that might wander onto the road, we can stop the competition instantly. We're in radio communication between each marshal point and the headquarters, if you like, or the control base. So we've actually got eyes on the whole course at every point. So it means that we run as safely as we possibly can. So there's a whole set of regulations and rules that go with it. We do appreciate the connotations of a boy racer culture, to use a popular term, but we and the other clubs in the region, there's probably 6 major clubs in our region, do work proactively to encourage people to come into the motorsport environment where it is safely run.
Thanks again, Jody, and we've just seen the benefit of public participation, and I'd probably urge you and or members of your organisation to at least come in once every triennium, and particularly when we have new councillors. It's good to have.
We've engaged with the council on many issues in the past, and we can see that there are benefits to do so. I mean, we've been running events obviously for quite some time. And we're keen to keep engaged, so that's excellent. I'd also like to say thank you to Maria and Helen, who was prior to Maria. They have been absolutely marvellous in assisting us to go through the processes. So it's really appreciated that the council continue to support us. It's one of the last few events that are run in the middle of a city. You don't get that anywhere else in the world, especially a capital city. So with the history, we're very keen to keep that going, obviously.
Yeah, I think those are good points. And I think that when I first met you, it was over calendar scheduling and cruise ships.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, that's been sorted out in one way. We don't have cruise ships, but that calendar of events, and again, thanks to Maria for keeping us on top of what goes on in the city. So,
no, absolutely, it's greatly appreciated. So, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Jody. Okay, we've got Mike Mallett online from Living Streets Aotearoa, and Mike, as you know, you're always more than welcome here, and you have 10 minutes.
Morena, councillors, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to talk about the traffic resolutions, and we have supported many of the traffic resolutions, which are pretty good. They further the parking policy and further the sort of things we think that council should be doing. But there's one in this batch that sticks out quite considerably, and that's Barnard Street, which is unique in 3 ways. First of all, when the council took over Barnard Street, the time limits were reduced to align with the parking policy and promote mode shift, quote. Now you're proposing to increase those time limits, so what you're proposing is precisely the opposite of what we're intending to do then. And apparently, these time limits are because of the underutilisation of the car park. And you're proposing to reinstate all day, i.e. commuter parking. But there's been no consideration for other options as far as we can see, and I'll come back to that later. Those are the stated reasons. A couple of reasons have appeared in the responses to submissions, saying some level of longer-term parking needs to be provided. Well, Barnard Street already does that. Twice the time limit of the on-street parking around it, and that Barnard Street will provide alternative parking to the parking being lost through the Newtown to City cycleway, which is a bit odd, because what you're proposing is a permanent change to compensate for a temporary change that's 20 minutes more walk away, and from the judicial review may not actually happen. So that's a bit odd. But the first unique aspect of Barnard Street is shown in the excellent feature you have in the resolutions of showing how they conform with parking policy. And as you clearly say, and I congratulate you for this, for the honesty and openness here, but it doesn't conform with parking policy. And in not conforming with parking policy, it also doesn't conform with your climate change policy and with Let's Get Welling Moving policies. Your policies are about reducing carbon emissions by reducing vehicle use. This is about increasing vehicle use. So that's why you're proposing to reduce the charges to get more vehicles in, which will have the opposite effect. The justification for this is that the council's committed to supporting economic activity. Yeah, great. Encouraging the public back into the central city, also great. But there's nothing said about how this will do that, whether this will do that, and as many people in the council know, that any connection between local car parking and economic activity is just a bit tenuous. So we've already talked about parking policy, climate change policy, and LGWM, none of which this supports. In fact, it goes against them. There's also the waterfront framework. Now, I noticed that dates from 2001, but it's still listed on your website as being a plan. And that says surface and commuter parking should be progressively removed as development takes place. So this is both categories, surface parking and commuter parking. And any parking on the waterfront is primarily for waterfront users, to support people who visit, live and work on the waterfront. That's not what you're proposing. So we've got a proposal here that well, it's odd, it's very odd, shall I say. But there are two other aspects of which it's unique. There's a very useful chart on pages 306 and 7 of your agenda. And I must admit, I admire you for reading all those pages of your agenda, which is about the beneficiaries from the change. And there are no beneficiaries listed. There is no one said to be benefiting from this change. So, and the third uniqueness is unique amongst these traffic resolutions, and I suspect amongst most, is that has no submissions in favour. So you've got a proposal that is against your policies, that has no identified beneficiaries, and nobody says they want. This is a dog, councillors. Put it out of its misery. But there is another way of looking at these things. You talk about what the options are for the space, for the underutilised car parking space. And just come on a small walking journey with me. We're going from Te Papa to Trafford's Park. We come out of the Papa entrance, turn left, follow the rather dingy path in front of the building, between the building and the car park. But when you come to the car park payment barriers at the end, if you look to your left, there is the makings of a paved tree-lined walkway. And you follow that tree-lined walkway and you get almost to the waterfront, it stops. It stops within cooey of the bridge across the wetland to the Barnard towards the overseas terminal. And what it has to do then, like every other route from Te Papa heading that direction, it has to cross the car park. Replace a few of those underused car parks with a continuation of that paved tree-lined walkway, and you've got an attractive means of getting around the waterfront. You've got the opportunity of extending, there's a small piece of grass there, extending that piece of grass, putting some seating in there, and making it a place where people actually want to be. We urge you to seize this opportunity, councillors, and thank you for listening.
As usual, Mike, thank you so much. I think we have Councillor O'Neill who would like to ask a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Another reason why I believe this traffic resolution has been put up is from the say of the majority of councillors, I guess, around the COVID response plan. That's what I've got in my head. So in terms of the Barnard Street traffic resolution, would you be supportive of uplifting that decision to a committee with which all councillors sit on, so that they can read the report and see that it is quite against our parking policy and no one's submitted in favour, etc.?
think that the council needs to seriously consider any proposal before it that is contrary, particularly when it's contrary to multiple policies. And it's a full council issue, I would have thought, and it's actually an opportunity being presented to do something good, to make the waterfront an even better place than it is largely, and follow the design principles that are already in place.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And I've just had some officer advice, and that advice is that perhaps it would be a better idea to send it through to full council.
Yeah, it was a decision made at council, so it needs a council resolution to complete it. The other point I'd make is it does appear counterintuitive, but it was made from a financial position. So it was an interesting submission from Mr. Mallor.
So
Thank you. I think that sounds like excellent advice to me.
So with the leave of the meeting, we could probably do that now. Refer it.
When the paper comes, perhaps, would that be okay? Just to properly process.
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor O'Neill. That's a very good idea that has support, I think. And thanks, Mike, also.
Thank you.
Yeah. We've still got some time for a.
Fantastic submission, Mike. That's why we need people like you out there doing good work for us. I just actually wanted to ask you about the Johnsonville Community Centre parking and about how flexible we should be on meeting the accessibility standards for disabled people, because I am not of a mind to compromise on this particular one. So I just wondered what Living Street's position was on that.
Well, we're a group that supports all people, whether with a disability or not. And when our focus, we generally take the view that if something is good for people with a disability, it's good for everybody, and therefore it should be done. We don't have a rigid policy on that. So it's on a case-by-case basis. Now, I'm not familiar with the Johnson Community Centre. But the disability guidelines are certainly there to be followed, and you'd have to have, to my mind, a very good reason not to follow them.
Thanks, Councillor Panner and Mike. Are there any further questions? Because there are a couple of minutes left. No, we're good. Thank you again, Mike.
Thank you.
And we have Tony Randall. Is Tony online? Welcome, Tony.
Hello, how are you? Hopefully you can hear me all right. My sound isn't very good.
No, we can hear you quite clearly.
Okay.
Oh, there
Here we
you
go.
are.
Right. So I'm here talking on behalf of the Johnsonville Community Association about fixing the disability parking literally outside the community centre where we have our meetings. There's a couple of things I want to say. First of all, this is a very particular set of circumstances. This is not just like there's a set of car parks and a disabled car park needs more space. It's actually got its own particular characteristics, and because it's outside our community centre and parking is at a premium, we really wanted to make some effort in terms of trying to meet the needs of the fixing the disabled park. That's actually the priority. That is our priority, and we agree with Kim of the community centre who raised the issue, and but also maybe being able to keep the park. And I absolutely I thank the City Council officers for their tolerance in working through our efforts. Can I share my screen? Is that possible? If I can share my screen, you've disabled it. So the particular, I guess, to cut to the chase in a way, it looked like there wasn't space to both widen the disabled car park access and still preserve one of the car parks. And we proposed a few options about essentially lengthening the width of the overall area of the car park, and that didn't work because of traffic safety issues. But went back again and talked to Kim in detail, and literally you almost need to stand on the spot to see what the problem is. So in the end, we proposed another alternative, and the council officers have come up with an alternative, it seems, that you're going to discuss later on, according to the chair, that means that we can actually meet the needs of the parking standards, but don't have to lose a car park. And it's mainly about moving one of the disabled parks to where a normal park is and, shuffling. I will say, so I do, like I say, it's to our community centre. I think it's worth the extra effort to provide access to everybody, and that's certainly the thought of Kim. Now, Kim's from the community centre. She sent in a submission generally in support of the traffic resolution, and we do support traffic resolution if we can avoid losing a normal car park. Kim sent it in before we had the final discussion, and so she actually also agrees with the particular issue. In the end, it's actually as much about preserving the curb around a light pole as it is about, from our perspective, it is about providing access to the car park, because the city council is reluctant to compromise on the curb around the light pole. We think it's actually can be moved a little bit. We still think that our option is superior to the option that the city council's got because it provides wider access, whereas I think the city council might not quite provide as good access. But I do believe that the city council has come up with an option that does meet all of our needs, and so I do thank them for the extra time they've done it, and also thank Councillor Condi for the time and effort she's put in, even when sick. So even though the traffic resolution I think you're going to actually be put to is a bit different to the one you've got, I do thank everyone, and hopefully, fingers crossed, and we want to meet again. I think we should just have one more meeting with the officers on the spot, just to run through the two particular things, and they might be able to tweak it. But the outcome, I think, is a good one. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Do we have any questions, councillors? No, we're good. Oh, Councillor Pennant.
Thanks, Tony, for putting all that work in, and obviously I'll listen to questions when we come to this particular item. I guess just my concern, as per the previous question, is that I'm concerned about compromising the needs of disabled people when we're really trying to put those parking needs up front. And the officers have some concerns about your proposed solution. So I guess I'm just wondering, from a community perspective, where do you sort of see the needs of different drivers and in terms of the sustainable transport hierarchy?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand your question.
So disabled drivers, do they have a higher place in the sustainable transport hierarchy than the wider community?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we've never hesitated from, even if we have to lose the car park, if we have to lose the car park, we have to lose the car park. We absolutely support access for the disabled, especially to our community centre, and they're regular users of it. So it's totally a priority. We have two disabled parks, and the issue occurs when one of the parks is already there. Because the reality is, and this is where our option I think is already superior. When there's one disabled park, when the first disabled car park comes up, and if the wheelchair comes off the back of the vehicle, which is what the issue is about, they just go through the other car park. Okay, they don't try and go along the edge of where their own car park is normally, because it's a big wide space and they can fit easily, and it's quite a safe area. Where they dismount out the back of the vehicle is not on the roadside. It's actually a couple of metres in from the roadside. And so it's a very safe area. It's only when there are two disabled car parks, as sometimes happens. I think there's a class from Onslow College that uses two vans that comes in sometimes. And that's the sort of point where they're both blocked, and the access around the light pole is a bit too narrow. I mean, as I say, the light pole has a curb around it. It's about 0.6 of a metre either side of the light pole, and the city council is not willing to compromise on protecting the light pole by not moving the curb. That is the preferred option that Kim from the community centre went in. So, as much as you are wanting to support parking, as I do, the reality is the light pole protection is actually a factor in this traffic resolution, and that we're trying to work around. So your office is also determined to protect, have a wide curb to protect the light pole, and I don't think that's necessary, because with the access way beside the light pole, you're already going to have the edge of the car park is going to be about nearly a metre away from where the curb will be. So they'll have to miss by over a metre, probably 1.5 metres to actually hit the light pole. So, you know, that's what complicates this particular traffic resolution.
Thanks, Tony.
Okay. So, you know, but again, thanks for the officers for trying extra hard.
Thank you. So we have Kim Dobchuk, who's going to public participate on the road stopping at 24 Cave Road. Welcome, Kim.
Hi. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present my case. I'm the landowner and the ratepayer for number 23, and as it comes up, number 23A, which that's a misnomer. It's number 23. Those properties have been joined several years ago. My concern is that I expect to be paid for the property that the council are going to take. They're selling 5 meters to number 24, someone who bought a property sight unseen from overseas, who apparently is a past colleague, possible mate, with the council members who are dealing with this. There's been a lack of transparency. I have been intimidated
excuse me, Kim,
and threatened.
If I could just ask you to be careful in how you address yourself towards the council officers. That's a fairly sweeping statement that could be misinterpreted.
Okay.
So thank you.
Okay. All right. I'll approach that a bit differently. I think this is an opportunity for the council to change a culture of threats, intimidation, and bullying. I have been subjected for over a year with letters.
Kim, if I could just interrupt you again, that language needs to be moderated.
Okay.
So you've had 2 chances at this. Yeah, if you could just stick to the issue, that would be great.
Okay, part of the issue is that they breached my privacy, and I've had to go to the privacy commissioner about this. Now, my concern is that will this changing of the road promote safety in the community? I'm a ratepayer. I haven't been treated in a very responsible manner from the council. I'd like to know if I'm going to be paid for the land that I'm being taken. They're taking 1.5 meters extensively of my property. I don't understand this. I've worked through the COVID pandemic. I haven't gone to meetings. I'd like to know about the safety for the community, for sidewalks that are put in, for fire trucks, ambulances going up an already narrow street, for someone developing their property at the expense of taking mine. And just where do I, sit as a ratepayer and having been threatened by the council for over a year? The mental stress has been too much. And I'm sorry if I use harsh language, but you should see some of the emails and correspondence that they've sent me. So that's it. I don't know what else to say.
Okay, thanks, Kim. I've got Councillor O'Neill with a question for you, and just before she does ask her question, the officers will answer some of the questions during the pre-debate. So please stay online, and you'll get an understanding of where the officers are coming from.
Okay. I'm sorry, I won't be able to. I'm a nurse in the hospital. We're short-staffed. People are off with COVID and other issues. So this has always been the situation, to try and fit in with the council's Monday to Thursday or Monday to Friday, where I work 15 hours a day, and they're taking some of my property, and I just want to know how I'm going to be compensated for that. I think it's a done deal. I think they've already sold the land, because number 24 has been working extensively on that property, has only stopped when I have approached the council and said, what's going on? He's only stopped since they've probably intervened, because there's been a lot of behind the scenes conversations and lack of transparency and breach of my privacy to number 24.
Okay.
So I'm sorry I can't stay on the line.
Thanks, Kim, but Councillor O'Neill does have
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Kim. Are you able to answer a question? My question was, you said 1.5 metres of your land. I just wanted to check, is that within your fence boundary, or is that road reserve, or is that, in your interpretation, is that within your property boundary?
No, no, sorry, the 5 meters is what they're selling. They're selling to number 24 because he wants his kids to have a safe place to play. This is what I've been fed all these years. He's a property developer. I've suggested that he goes down to the park like everybody else in the community has for years. He's established wonderful parks in Houghton Bay area. So to me, he's a property developer. This isn't going to be just significant. And I don't know, maybe I'm way off beam here, but
Oops, we've lost you, Kim. I think we've, yeah.
please, I can provide any of the documentation. I firmly believe if I
Kim, we're having
treated the way that I have been.
Yeah, we're having a few network difficulties in hearing you, and we've just come
Of
up to
course you
time
will.
anyhow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for your submission, and councillors will take that on board.
Right.
Tim Jones, welcome, Tim, on traffic resolution TR 69-22, and you're on Zoom, and good to see you again.
Thank you. Now, I just, before I give my submission, I just want to check. I was here for Mike Miller's earlier submission on the same issue for Living Streets. And at the time, you discussed referring this to a full council decision. So I'm very happy to give my submission, but if you're going, have you made a decision to refer it to the full council? And if so, would it make more sense for me to give my submission at that point?
Yeah. We haven't made the decision. You can come to if it gets referred to council, you can come to that and give your perspective there too. So
well, I guess my concern is that if you haven't made that decision, it's probably good if I do give my perspective.
Yeah,
if you're definitely going to refer it to council, it would make more sense then.
Yeah, we welcome that, Tim.
So I will give my perspective now?
Yes, that would be lovely.
Okay. So I'm going to submit along very similar lines to Mike Meller. I was very surprised to see this particular traffic resolution because it clearly contradicts your own policy. And I wanted to start with the actual objectives of the parking policy. Shift in type of transport used. Transport through parking management and pricing to move more people driving fewer vehicles. Clearly, it contradicts that objective. It also contradicts by seeking to increase the use of parking, it also contradicts the objective to support safe movement and to support city placemaking, amenity and safety, and to support the move to becoming an eco-city. Now, there is a suggestion in the officer's response to submissions that the idea here is to support business well-being. However, no evidence is given that business well-being has been affected. And in fact, in the councillor's response to submissions includes this paragraph. Anecdotally, while we are starting to see the return of people to the city, the purpose of this traffic resolution is to provide some level of longer-term parking than that offered by our on-street offering. Well, I'd make two comments in relation to that. One, anecdotally is not the same as evidence. And two, the Barnard Street car park already offers, and it's on the current parking conditions, already offers longer-term parking than is offered by your on-street offering. Similarly, while there's a very important objective of supporting access for all, however, increasing the period that a car can be parked in a car park is actually, if private vehicles are needed to support access for all, then increasing the period that a car park can be offered by one vehicle is actually decreasing access for all. And of course, and as Mike noted, council officers have themselves acknowledged that this proposal is contrary to aspects of the parking policy. Now, furthermore, it is contrary to the council, to the Te Atakura plan. The council has declared a climate emergency, has decided to make a significant reduction in emissions, a major part of which, to reach net zero by 2050, it's got very significant emissions reductions requirements from now to 2030. Seeking to increase the use of car parks is directly contrary to that. So there's no evidence in favour, no beneficiaries are listed, no submitters submitted in favour. It just seems quite extraordinary to me that with all these factors, that you're still considering going ahead with this proposal. For something which so clearly contradicts your own policies to be considered, there should at the very least be detailed evidence presented as to why this should happen, because it's extremely hard for submitters if it relies on anecdote and on supposed support for the business community, which is not cited in any way in the proposal, and for which there are no submitters in favour. It's extremely hard for submitters such as myself opposed to this proposal to respond to the supposed arguments in favour of it. So it suggests that if this is to go to council for consideration, there needs to be some evidence that there is in fact some need for this, and if there's no evidence, then you should reject it. And that is my proposal, that I was going to propose that you reject it now, but if it's going to go to council, then I think this is clearly contrary to your policies. No evidence, no support. It should be rejected. Thank you.
Perfect timing, Tim. Thank you for that. I don't think there are any questions. You were pretty clear and concise. So thank you for your submission. We now have Pat Venaccia. Welcome, Pat. Good to see you again too. And your public participation relates to TR 6722, which is Kelsmere Crescent Island Bay.
That's correct. Morning, everyone. Oh, look, I've got a photo here. Is that possible to kind of hand round or?
Sure.
As Councillor Wolf said, my name's Pat Venaccia, and I live at 19 Kelsmere Crescent Island Bay. I received the proposed changes to the road and provided my feedback to support. However, with the inclusion of broken yellow lines to stretch from 19 Kelsmere down to 9. The officer's response to my inclusion was declined due to safety risk being minimal. I therefore now oppose the changes, and my reasoning is due to safety. The road is 6 metres wide from the top of Kelsmere to the bottom, and it's a dead-end street. The changes proposed will direct cars to park between 9 to 19 on both sides. I've provided the photo there. Hopefully you can all see that. With two wide vehicles parked, like the ones in the photo, there's hardly enough room for a van to move through. And so for safety, so the safety risk is for people that require emergency services. The distance between those parked vehicles is approximately 2.2 metres, and both fire trucks and ambulance will not be able to safely pass and therefore attend to emergency further up the road. So, look, I mean, it's effectively just putting yellow lines down one side. I just seem to think it was just a logical thing to do. I mean, this council's very, very quick to remove car parks, and being in Island Bay, I've just had about 120 removed from the parade for safety reasons. So my reasoning's, I think, quite a sensible one. I mean, there is growth in the area, and unfortunately there's probably more cars in the area too, just with the amount of development that's going on. So I've got probably questions. If anyone's got any, then that's probably my bit. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. And Deputy Mayor Free has a question for you.
I do, because Pat, I actually used to live at number 9 Kelsmere Crescent, so I know something about the street. What is there? I see on the officer's proposal there's 2 sections of yellow lines, dotted yellow lines.
There's actually 3. So,
okay.
So they're around corners, and
yes.
So, there are cars that actually park there, and then there's one further up Kelsmere, just outside 25. I'm the driveway that runs just. Actually, have you got the plan there? Is it the plan that I'm looking at with the broken yellow lines?
I'm looking at 3. You're right. There are 3. Yeah.
Yeah. So look, I'm proposing. I did propose from 23, which is the corner of my private driveway that comes down, to be yellow lines all the way through on the east side of the road. So effectively, there's only cars parked on one side. It's 6 metres. So, generally a smaller vehicle's around about 2 metres. So there's just not enough movement through to get, or even rubbish trucks for that matter.
So your contention is, if we didn't dot the bit in between 9 and 5, that you could potentially have cars parked on both sides, which would narrow it too much?
I'm talking about 9 to 23.
Oh, 9 to 23.
Yeah, so it's that stretch between 9 and 23.
Okay.
Well, the thing is, further up the road, you're going to lose about 3 car parks, and there's probably a couple there. So they're just going to direct themselves to that area, and that's where the congestion the issues will lie.
Okay.
Pat, again, officers will be asked that question. Your presentation's pretty clear that you would like more yellow lines to be able to mitigate the safety issues, and I can see that as being. Deputy Mayor Free.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, because my concern would be about children's safety, because there's visibility to those driveways is quite poor.
Yep.
What do you think? Do you think what you're proposing would help in terms of making sure people have clear lines of sight?
Well, putting broken yellow lines is going to take away the cars parked there, so it's going
so it would help.
Yeah, definitely a bit of visibility. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Pat.
Very much.
And I think you can have the assurance that question's been asked of officers, and they'll come back and we'll see what happens from there.
Right. Thanks. For your time.
Thank you for coming in. Lydia, you've been so patient. Thank you very, very much. You've come to talk to us about the new naming right-of-way in Kandala. So welcome along. I don't know that you've been with us before. You have. Welcome back.
Thank you. I don't have a lot to say, but I would first like to start with just a big thank you to Carmen and the work that she's done in consultation with the name for the private well. We have just found her fantastic to work with, and also we'd like to extend a thank you to Liz Kelly from Hātepe, who forwarded some names that while they weren't able to be adopted, we welcomed them. We thought they were beautiful names. We would just like to put forward our support for the name article. Each of the new owners supportive of the name, and that really, that's good news in a nutshell. Thank you again for a great process and beautifully managed.
Thanks, Lydia. That was very succinct, and we're very appreciative when our officers get acknowledged in the way that you have, and I would endorse. My personal dealings with Carleen in a professional manner have always been great, and it's good that someone from outside the organisation has taken the opportunity to thank her as well. So appreciate it. Now, We don't have any further public participation, but we do have two statements that I've agreed that should be read out. The first is from Sandra Heffernan in regards to 24 Cave Road, and the second is from Peter and Christine Fletcher. So Elise is going to read these out. Thanks, Elise.
Okay. Kia ora, councillors. So this is a submission from Sandra Heffernan and John Ashton. Our primary concerns are road safety and long wheelbase vehicle access at the sharp, steep bend to the southeast of 24 Cave Road. The bend has been a hazard and safety risk worthy of improvement for decades. The proposed stopping of a 5-metre strip adjacent to 24 Cave Road will cut down the options for the necessary improvements and make them more complex and expensive. The deficiencies in the road design at the bend are obvious. It is a steep, blind bend where two small cars cannot easily pass. Most vehicles take the simple option of driving on the wrong side of the road. Larger vehicles rule out any passing at all. Pedestrians have to walk on the road alongside or straight at motor vehicles. Cyclists have the same problems. The bend's radius and steepness mean that long wheelbase vehicles, in particular fire engines, cannot round it. Such vehicles have ended up stuck on the road surface. We have witnessed a fire brigade exercise where the firefighters practice walking up from the bend. Every problem on the bend is exacerbated by ill-considered parking above and below the bend. The volume of traffic of all kinds in Cave Road has increased greatly over the past 30 years. There have been at least 8 new dwellings accessed from Cave Road above the bend in this time, with the majority of all dwellings now having multiple vehicles. The number of home deliveries by vehicle has increased notably, New Zealand Post, online grocery shopping, and takeaway couriers. Also, the number of rubbish and recycling vehicles and the frequency of their visits has multiplied. There are now more residents to drive, walk, and cycle in the area, and the life cycle of Cave Road has meant that younger families with children are taking over from the previous older residents. Given the sightlines and vegetation, shorter people and children can become invisible to drivers. As part of the Wellington City Council road stopping evaluation process, Paul Davidson sent us a Wellington City Council Transport Unit plan showing the proposed stopping and possible footpaths and road widening that could nevertheless go ahead. In our view, the optimum safety improvement would be to widen the road on the bend and approaches to the greatest extent and to provide a footpath. The plan shows that if the stopping proceeds, it will reduce the possible extent of road widening. It will also mean that a retaining wall would be necessary to hold the road, and footpath if it were built on that side of the road above the stopped strip. This will reduce the width of the potential widening, making the work more complex and expensive to build, so therefore less likely to proceed. If the stopping does not happen, the road and footpath could be held to be simply sloped banked over the proposed stopping strip. Finally, if the footpath were built on the side of the bend and plan it shows outside of the bend and the plan it shows would be necessary to cut into a vertical wall of unstable rock, possibly necessitating a retaining wall, which would make the safety improvements more complex to build and less likely to be implemented. And the second one.
Yep. Thanks, Elise.
I'll just proceed with the second statement that we received from Christine and Peter Fletcher. We are Christine and Peter Fletcher, owners of the occupiers of 29 Cave Road, and part of the small delegation that met with your representatives on site a while ago concerning the proposed sale of the part of the road reserve adjacent to 24 Cave Road. Cave Road has become increasingly congested over time. Parking on both sides of the road, including on the footpath, has restricted traffic flow to a single lane, which is often too narrow for larger vehicles such as a fire engine or ambulance. On the corner in question, outside 24 Cave Road, uphill traffic is forced into the middle of the road, where it is very likely to meet downhill traffic navigating the blind bend. We are still of the opinion that this corner represents a danger to pedestrians and vehicles, both in terms of the absence of a footpath, the constrained road geometry, and very poor sightlines due to the overhanging vegetation. Narrowing of the road reserve will reduce the options available for future improvements, and we object to the proposed sale on those grounds. Peter and Christine Fletcher.
Thanks, Elise, and thanks to the two lots of submitters as well. We're now going to take a break for morning tea. 10 minutes? 15 minutes? 15 minutes? So we'll come back at 20 to 11 with Brad.
Gives me pleasure to introduce this background paper to the road stopping of 24 Cave Road. We officers are recommending that we stop 135 square meters of road land and that we sell off 134 square meters of that to 24 Cave Road. Officers have received objections and have responded to the submitters' concerns in the paper. I can confirm that the land is not required for roading purposes, and I have John and Paul here with me to answer any questions on the paper itself.
Thanks, Brad. And we have Councillor Pennant with a question.
2 questions, thank you. So can you just triple confirm that no land is being taken from, I think it was number 23?
Correct.
So I just wasn't clear why she thought it was.
Neither are we, and we have tried to explain that it's a front yard setback on her land that's going to be created, but not as a result of the road stopping any longer, but as a result of the medium density residential standard, which will be implemented once the district plan is notified in July. And it's a uniform setback across all residential zoned properties.
Are you able to write to her formally after the vote?
We already have, but we can again.
Yeah. Okay, and the setback rule, I'm glad you're here, Liam, because I just wanted, this is purely a process and legal issue. Essentially, they have applied for this road stopping under the current provisions, but basically we're being told that they will no longer apply because they're coming in quite soon and will have effect. So I just want to make absolutely sure that we've got the process right.
Yes, that's correct. So we have a requirement to implement those medium density residential standards by August, and then the Minister has until November 23 to enshrine that in the Tier 1 Council plans. So including the intensification work, the MDRS is also part of that as well. So John's correct in that we're preparing for that setback, those minimum standards, because as a result of the MDRS, you won't be lodging a resource consent instead of building consent. And so to comply with that building consent standard, you need to have that locked in by November 23, but seriously entertained by Council once you notify your proposed district plan as required by the Minister.
Yeah, the question though is that it hasn't been applied under those standards, so I just wanted to understand.
So the operative plan, I mean, John, you've got this in detail, of course, but the operative plan at the moment has different setback standards for
and it is
general residential area.
Correct, and it is tied to road stopping, and we originally wrote and explained there would be a 2.5 metre setback as a consequence of the road stopping and the road narrowing to 15 metres, remaining width. So that would create a 2.5 metre setback imposition upon her property. So there's 2 properties at 23, and I think it's about along 7 metres of her frontage, and it's at the top of a steep bank. Not quite sure where the contours are, so you physically would struggle to build up to the front boundary in any event. And if there was any compensation to be talked about, it might be that they'd need to go for a resource consent to build within that area currently under the current district plan, and at least the cost of that should be met probably by the owner opposite who's creating the imposition as a consequence of the road stopping. And that was the conversation that we had with the applicant, and we're trying to join up with Kim and the applicant to perhaps talk about that. But as you can tell, any communication or meeting or conversations have been quite difficult.
Okay, sorry, just to press a point though, I still haven't got the process question answered. So even though it's been applied under current law, current district plan,
yep,
the new provisions will apply?
They're meant to be implemented on the 1st of July, I understood.
Right, okay, so just usually, when something's applied for under a particular regime, that's the regime that will apply, but you're saying because of the new rules, it will be assessed under that?
Look, just through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm not that familiar with this particular site, but I think, John, what you're saying is that in preparing for this site to be developed. Is that your point?
Yes. No. It's
because in
nothing to do with-
August will be the operative. So the proposed plan will be notified July, and we'll comply with the minister's requirement to notify those new provisions by August, and therefore it will be entertained as a planning rule, but it won't be enshrined until November 23.
Right.
Now it's still given weight in making the decision, but won't actually be locked into the plan when the minister moves those tier ones into the new regime in November next year.
Yeah.
So sorry, I'm still not understanding and that was the question.
Sorry, this is super interesting, but I'm just questioning the relevance to the current item.
But because the setback issue is raised in both papers, I'm just asking a simple question: which provisions have weight in this decision?
Well, I'll answer that from a planning point of view. John, you can explain your logic in more detail, but the operative plan provisions apply if a planning decision is being made. This isn't a planning decision.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor O'Neill? No? Yes, good. I just want to just reaffirm or get some reaffirmation from you guys in relation to the concerns that the submitters had regarding safety and the narrowness of the road. I've read, Paul, your emails, and you've given assurances there, and they're very good emails, by the way. So yeah, there's no plan to do any further safety improvements in that area.
My comment on that point is that generally for a road stopping proposal, it wouldn't even go to an application stage unless the transport unit was supporting it. In this case, following receiving concerns from the neighbours, we reverted it back to transport to say they have concerns. Would it be possible to prepare a scheme plan or a concept plan to show possible improvements in the 15 metres that we would keep, which is what Transport did and which was provided to the objectors. So Transport have gone above and beyond what they normally would.
Yep, thank you for that assurance. I just needed that to be stated in public. Councillor Matthews, are you?
Yeah, I've just got a question because in the time that I've been on regs, we haven't had any objections to road stopping, and now we've had 2. And I just wanted to sort of check in, I guess, about how frequent these are, if there's some reason why we're getting a couple, because they do seem, and they also seem, both of them, to have been, sort of the cause of a lot of tension and conflict between neighbours.
I have been doing these for quite a while, and there is no rhyme or reason, and like the proposal being received, they're considered case by case, and so the objections likewise, you don't know what's going to eventuate or what's concerning people.
Yeah, thank you. I can move this now. Thank you very much, and for the manner in which the clarity in which the questions have been answered. So I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Yep, and we can move. No, I'm certainly quite comfortable. Any other councillors wish to enter into debate? Well, let's do the voting bit. Green for yes and red for no. Yeah, that's carried. Thank you, everyone. And we'll move on to...
Yeah. Oh, see you tonight. Councillors, gives me pleasure again to introduce another paper on road stopping at 117 Seatoun Heights. We're recommending that we stop 93 square metres of roadland and that we sell off 91 square metres of that to 117. We have responded to concerns in the paper, and I'm comfortable that the land isn't required for roading purposes. And we have Sarah Jane and John here to accompany me to answer any questions.
Questions, councillors? Any? Oh, Councillor Pennant. Yeah.
Sorry, just back on the setback rule. So I just want to make sure I'm absolutely clear on this. The road stopping at the moment triggers the setback rules, but once they're changed, that no longer happens. Is that correct?
That is correct. And in this particular case, as Paul mentioned, everyone is assessed case by case, and in this particular case, the objector actually exceeds the current district plan resource consent requirements for site coverage and a number of other things. So they would have had to apply for a resource consent regardless of the road stopping, and that was a to and fro conversation that we had with them, which they didn't really accept, I guess. But again, if there was to be any compensation, it would be a civil matter between the applicant and the neighbour.
And do you think there's any unfairness in that essentially this party and the previous one are in a transition period between a law change? And so they're looking at this matter under, the previous provisions, and now they've changed?
It's not really a question I could say whether it's fair or not, really. It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah, I guess it feels difficult for me because there was a particular regime and they expected it to work in a certain way.
Councillor Pennant, I think John's given a pretty reasonable response.
Well, it's...
Yeah, please don't push it, because I don't know that would be fair. Are we all comfortable, councillors? Those online, I haven't. No questions from. And we have a seconder in Councillor Matthews, and I'll put this to the vote.
I just want to quickly say that Sarah Jane, your patience and those thorough emails are really noted.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Matthews. The quality of the email responses over the road stopping's been really good.
I'm just wondering, just given there were some allegations made, Chair, whether a final letter could be written to the other parties, just to finish this matter off.
Yeah, I think a gentle response outlining the committee's view would be good, particularly bearing in mind that the last vote was unanimous.
If I can, we will need the objectors all to formally withdraw their objections. Otherwise, the matter does get referred to the Environment Court because you've chosen to proceed with the road stopping. So we will be in touch with them.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah Jane. And I think in one of Paul's emails, I think he made that quite clear to the respondents as well. Sometimes we send emails out where people don't want to get that sort of response, but and they interpret it probably in not the way that it was intended. And just so that you know, Councillor Matthews has referred to the quality of the emails. I thought that they were excellent as well. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
We'll vote. Yeah, thank you, councillors, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, officers. We'll move on. Where's Maria? Brad, we'll have you back in a wee while. Sorry, it's a little bit disjointed. Welcome.
for the city and the. We have Kilburnie.
Marie, you might need to just get a little closer to the mic because of our Zoom. Thank you. Yep.
Oh, is that better? Yes, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. It was just that your voice was carrying really well. We thought you were on mic.
Stop it. So we have the St James Theatre reopening on the 2nd of July, which is going to be a wonderful event for the city and the council, you know, kind of kicking that off. We have the Kilburnie Christmas Parade, Johnsonville Christmas Parade, the Very Welly city event that we have down here on Empton Quay, and we have also the Shelley Bay and Alexander Hill Climb road races that you heard Jodie talk about this morning, and we also have coming back online 2023, 24th of March, Cuba Duper. It's going to be quite exciting to get these events off and going again with no COVID.
You've been busy, haven't you?
It's going to be busy for all of us going forward. Do we have any questions on stuff that's
Councillor Matthews.
Just checking in that the Shelley Bay sealed sprint won't be affected by any roadworks or anything?
No, we cover that all off on the way to that event day.
Beautiful.
Any other questions, councillors, online? No, that was very clear and concise, and it will be good to have more events around the city. So, yeah, thank you for the work that you both do. And we'll I'll move. Deputy Mayor Free will second. Is there any debate? No. Let's just move straight to the vote. Oh, Councillor O'Neill, sorry. Where you go?
I just want to thank Maria and the team for getting the car group to come and chat to us. I know that it's been requested for a wee while, and it's just really refreshing to hear what they're doing to be able to mitigate some of these events in our community. But yeah, sorry for making a speech just to thank someone, but I do really appreciate that they came to see us today.
You don't need to apologise, Councillor O'Neill. It's always good to have appreciation shown to our officers. Thank you. Okay, we'll pop this to the vote as well. And that's carried unanimously as well. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, officers.
Thank you very much.
So if I could invite Brad back, because we have all the traffic resolutions to go through. And I know that there'll be a few questions here, Brad, so.
Yeah, I might ask Maria to join me, see if she can answer some of them. Such a good job with the road closures.
Sense of humour.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, gives me pleasure to introduce another set of traffic resolutions for you today. Quite a few no stopping at all times, broken yellow lines, and a few others. One of these traffic resolutions will be deferred, which is TR 65 Hobson Street. That's just so that we can make a few amendments to that traffic resolution. It'll come back in August is when we're targeting to bring that back. And I have Zach online who will help me with any really difficult technical questions.
Who would like to start? Yeah, you can start with 3. That's good. That gives us time to prepare for our ones.
Yeah. So I did talk to you in the break about the Tinakori Road one, and I'm conflicted between removing parking, which I'm very keen to do, but also that whole idea that this is an arterial road, which I object to. So on balance, the question is it more important to really work on trying to meet all our strategic objectives around slower speeds, carbon reduction, versus stopping people idling in traffic when they're banked up behind this one car park?
I suppose it is quite a broad question in terms of what are we targeting to do here, and I think the objective is not necessarily to move vehicles. It is to stop vehicles from idling for excessive periods of times, because if those vehicles are idling, that's just introducing carbon emissions into that space. So getting them through this intersection is kind of ensuring that we minimize the amount of carbon emissions that those vehicles are causing. It's one car park from I know you did talk about a traffic calming perspective. Yes, it does provide traffic calming. Will reduce speeds, but at the same time, it also causes heavy congestion throughout the day, actually.
Okay, that's fine. The loading zone on Constable Street, does that mean we're going to put a loading zone outside every apartment building? I just wondered about the policy implications of that.
Just have a quick look.
That was 293 on Diligent. Yeah, I know, but the point is it's a policy question, partly. Yeah, but are we going to do it for everyone, is my question.
I think it's not necessarily just for apartment users. So what we saw was that when the construction loading zone was there, it actually serviced quite a few activities, from rubbish removal to a whole bunch of other things that it was servicing, and so that's why it actually makes a lot of sense to have it there. In terms of getting rid of a unrestricted car parking space or two unrestricted car parking space and converting it into a loading zone that could be used.
Yeah, okay. And the Johnsonville one, I'm sure Jenny will ask too, but do you think there's a need for another meeting just to see if we can get this one absolutely right? And it would really help for Mr. Randall to explain to me that they weren't going to donut ditch over the car park. But the meeting, and also I don't want to compromise the accessibility requirements. So I guess I'm just wanting some assurance that whatever is come back with, or whether we vote today, that it is meeting those standards.
Yeah, so Zach did a little bit of work, and Zach, I'm not sure if you want to talk through that bit of work that you did with this particular traffic resolution.
Yeah, everyone can hear me clearly, right? Excellent. Yep. So yeah, I was just doing some additional measurements last night to accommodate a third option that was presented by Councillor Condi and the CCS group regards to putting two mobility parks on one side. But when I was doing the measurements, I could actually squeeze in everything without losing a car park. If I could potentially share my screen. No, that's been disabled. If the host could potentially give me access to share my screen.
Yeah, can you just try again, Zach?
Excellent. Yeah, it's working now. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so hopefully everyone can see that now. I believe the area at the beginning was apparently this car park here was under construction or had some container or something in it, so the measurements on site were potentially not correct. That might still require an additional site visit just to confirm what I've drawn up here, but we can fit everything in here and still have an additional 2.5 metre gap in here without losing a car park. It does squeeze everything up a little bit more, but 2.5 is the standard car park. Okay. And yeah, when I was checking the third option, that didn't work. They actually did lose a car park.
Okay, and did you get any feedback from CCES Disability Action?
On this one right here, no, because I was drawing this up last night.
Okay, right. Well, I think you'd asked for feedback earlier on, so it would just be nice to have that confirmation that they're happy with it as well.
Regards the original question, regards to having only a hatched area on one side, they were against that, unfortunately. But I believe with what I've drawn here, we can make everyone happy without losing a car park.
That is fantastic. Thank you very much. And so just one last quick question. Brad, is it possible to put the traffic resolutions in by suburb? A submitter made a suggestion. I thought that was very practical.
Yes, we're looking at doing that. We're looking at implementing something.
Thank you.
Councillor Matthews?
Yeah, I think Councillor Condi has one as well. But I just want to completely clarify, there's no compromise to the new sort of policy around how we're doing mobility car parks with the latest changes you've made?
No, this provides the. We usually have 3 metre car parks, but since there's an actually large gap in the middle, it actually provides for the ramp into the centre. And so we can retain a 2.5. And also in the original one, we were allowing a 2.3 since there was a huge gap to the side.
Thank you.
Any further? I think Councillor Condi. Welcome, Jenny.
Thank you. Hey, Zach, I just want to understand if we approve this today, this is great. First of all, thank you for the extra work and getting us to this place. I guess my question is, if we approve this today and it turns out we go back and double check the measurements and something isn't quite right, what happens then?
Then we might have to refer to the original, but I'm pretty confident these measurements are correct, but we will need to do our on-site meeting. We could potentially agree today that if this doesn't work, we go back to the original and just have to sacrifice that one car park. Because I did trial that third option that was proposed, and that does take out a third car park, because the mobility park to the left would need to have a 3 metre wide car park, simply to have enough room for the ramp, if that kind of vehicle is used.
All right. So I guess, would you say, Zach, that we've at this point explored every possible option and every possible configuration for these mobility parks, and that this is the only option that potentially saves that one car parking space?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So in your view, if this option turns out for whatever reason not to be viable, the only alternative to bringing these mobility spaces up to scratch is to remove that parking space?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. I do have a question about Kelsmere, but I'm going to wait and let Councillor Day go, because I'm assuming she's going to be asking about Johnsonville as well.
Welcome, Councillor Day, particularly as you're sort of ex officio on this committee, and it's nice to have people, councillors who aren't voting members here, so it'd be good to have your perspective. Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you, and thank you heaps, Zach, for your mahi on this. I know it's been a lot of backwards and forwards. My question was around the light pole and the comments around the fact that it should be possible to be able to bring the curb in. I'm just wanting to understand, I mean, I imagine that the issue is that some of these bigger vehicles speak to that. We did hear today the comment, that we should be able to cut that curb down a bit.
So you cut out a little bit. Do you mean the curb around the light pole?
Around the light post. So we heard today that we should be able to cut the curb a little bit, and it shouldn't have an issue. But I imagine that some of these larger vehicles that have accessibility requirements have possibly a bigger overhang at the front.
Yes, it's definitely best to have a minimum kind of curb or area around the pole. Otherwise, like this is a concrete pole, so it's more likely to damage the vehicle than the pole itself. There's a good example out in the hut on the Esplanade where like there's a pole constantly rammed and hit, and then we put in a little curb around it and it kind of protected it. So it definitely needs a curb for vehicles to know that they're hitting the curb before they hit the pole. Especially if they're trying to reverse, and for most of these mobility vehicles, they might need to reverse into these car parks to get the correct alignment for their ramps.
What would be the distance that you'd usually have around a lamppost like this? Is it the required distance there, or is it generous?
I'm not quite sure, but I'd say a minimum of 1 metre around it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Day. Deputy Mayor Free.
Thank you. Look, I want to ask about a couple. So the first one is the Barnard Street suggestion of lengthening the time because it's underutilised at present and there's a bit of a need for a longer stay car park. Have we got up-to-date car parking data since people have been starting to come back into the city a little bit? Or how recent is this data that we're working off?
Do you have Kevin?
Set onto, yeah.
Cool.
So I haven't got the data in front of me, but I do know that the car park is still well underutilised at the moment. Yeah.
And I would presume that if we decided that wasn't the case anymore, we could then adjust, readjust the times to suit, maybe as it is a little bit contrary at the moment to the car parking policy if we were to do this, but we could reverse it again.
Yes, we could, but the rationale for doing it, of course, was in line with the parking policy, which is the current arrangement was to help support the parking policy and the council's objectives in terms of removing parking from the central city, that was part of the rationale for doing that in the first place.
Okay.
So the current arrangement that we currently have running right now.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Chair, just a process point. I wonder if given I think there's broad consensus, if we could delay any questions on the Barnard Street car park to when the paper comes back. We just might be able to save some of us and some officer time today, but happy to take your lead. Didn't want to be a point of order about it. So
well, we haven't actually agreed to it as yet, but I think
that's right.
It'd be good to get some officer advice on that, though, at this point in questions.
Yeah.
Can we refer it? Should we refer it? Where could we refer it to?
Well, to move it to another committee of the whole, you'll need a debate and a resolution and vote. And the other point I think would make is that there's two resolutions that relate to assisting the CBD from a COVID response point of view, which is, I think, to the Deputy Mayor's point, contrary to the current parking policy, and that was TR 56 and 69 as block. Slightly different circumstances, but both passed with the same logic in mind, which is an opportunity to support the CBD post-COVID.
Once we move into debate, can we move that and perhaps with the leave of the meeting rather than a resolution?
But I think Elise's drafted a...
Okay, that will be great.
Does this subcommittee have legal authority to oppose the Barnard Street changes? Well, that's because it's...
it's here.
No, I'm asking the process question. Just, do we have the powers to do that? Just given it was a council policy decision, public submitters have been very compelling. Can we vote against it? Just get rid of it.
But I believe, and I take advice from the governance team, but this is a council decision. So regardless of the fact, you are always able to make decisions contrary to policy. That is a given for any council. And so you made this decision because policy is just a guideline. You made this decision in a certain circumstance back in February, I think. And therefore but however you made that as a committee of the whole, so you need to send it back to a committee of the whole for the decision to be turned around.
Okay, so that is the process. All right, okay, thanks.
Okie dokie. I have a question on, before we go back to Councillor Condi, on Kelsmere and Pat Venatia's feedback as to that he supported the initial proposal but didn't think it went far enough. Could you just give us a little bit of, and that was on the grounds of safety. I thought his argument was quite compelling. I'm just wondering if there's any leeway there.
So I have had a traffic engineer go out and meet with Pat on site and evaluate his concerns. The traffic engineering advice is that this deals with the safety issue. It's the broken yellow lines that they've suggested to put in are around corners and where visibility is a concern. The area that Pat is looking at for additional broken yellow lines is not as much of a pinch point, is not as much of a visibility concern from a traffic engineering perspective. What they are looking at now is they're looking at emergency services to see if it's an emergency services route and whether emergency services have had problems there in the past. if that is the case, we'll come back with additional broken yellow lines. But for now, from a safety perspective, the traffic engineering advice is these broken yellow lines should suffice.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Councillor Free.
So my second question was actually around Kelsmere Crescent. And is it correct to assume, because I know how blind some of those driveways are with the corner and the hill, is it the case that by putting in the recommended ones that we've got in front of us, that will address some of the sightline and driveway issues? I understood that from the paper.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's there for. It's
Yeah.
exactly what
Okay.
it's there for.
Thank you.
Councillor Condi. And then Councillor Day.
Thank you. Thanks, Brad. I guess just confirming that even if we did want to put in additional broken yellow lines through there, that it would still require another traffic resolution process. So that's pretty much what's happening anyway.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So you're going to go away and see whether another traffic resolution is needed.
Yeah.
Just on the Barnard Street and the move to P180 in the city, I had a question about Barnard Street, which is just that Councillor Day reminded me that when this was debated, one of the key things that we were concerned about was orchestra members who needed to be able to park for longer periods of time, and there was nothing in the paper about that. So assuming this does get moved to another committee, it might be useful just to have that point raised in the papers when it comes to that committee. I have to say my memory of that discussion was limited, but I was also kind of wondering whether if there was a particular issue there, whether there was an arrangement we could make directly with the orchestra rather than changing the whole parking area to be contrary to the parking policy, whether if there's one particular group that we are trying to accommodate, whether there might be a way to give them special permits or something like that. So I just wanted to, I think moving it to another committee is probably a good idea, and that would be a little bit of additional advice that I would really appreciate before it comes to that committee.
Okay, we'll look at that before it comes to the next committee, and we'll be ready to respond to that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Councillor Day, third time lucky.
Kia ora, thank you. Mine's on the Barnard Street one as well, because I do remember in the meeting we had some quite compelling submissions from the NZSO, saying to us that they were struggling with car parking, and there really isn't much option. But it wasn't just limited to them. I think there are other creatives who, when they come in to do practices and things, they just need somewhere to be able to park, and they often have big equipment, which was a big challenge for them. So they do need to be located in that kind of vicinity. So did you go back and watch that meeting at all before doing the paper? I'm just wanting to understand the context around it saying that there wasn't any community affected.
No, we hadn't reviewed that footage, but we'll include it before it comes to full council.
That'd be good. And I just wondered if maybe it might be worth also having a chat to the arts team, particularly like Gisela, and just seeing if we can get some more information about who we feel are affected by that, so that we can really explain that well, because the COVID part was part of it, but it wasn't completely. It really was about the lack of access to parking for a particular part of our community, which is really struggling because of COVID, but they always probably would have needed access to that.
Will do.
Thanks, Councillor Day.
Cool. Thank you.
I don't have anybody else on the question list. Councillor Panna, at morning tea, you talked about Tinakori Road, and you've got that sorted?
I'll just ask for that to be taken separately, and I'll vote against it. Cool.
Okay.
I'm going to keep a car park,
go that far.
Councillor Wolf.
Okay, so I think now I'd like to move with the leave of the meeting that we defer TR 56 and TR 69, which are the two traffic resolutions that have been talked about quite wholeheartedly, really, that they get deferred to performance and finance. Is that the officers Finance and performance.
Finance and performance, June 16, but just to take Councillor Condi's point, that agenda closes today, Mr Singh, so if you were going to review the material and amend the report, you'll have to move quickly.
No pressure, Brad, no pressure.
I'll have a quiet word with Haiti.
Yeah, we can also potentially deal with it through the formal Q&A, but whatever can be done today would be great.
Yeah, that's right. You've got the option of responding through the officer question time to Councillor Day and Councillor Condi's query around the NZSO.
Are we all comfortable with that?
Just ask, sorry, sure. Are we going to defer the Johnsonville one as well? Sorry, this is the Barnard
Yeah.
Street one. Sorry, all the numbers I can't keep up. So the Johnsonville and the Barnard Street are being...
We haven't talked about Barnard Street, Johnsonville it's separate to this.
Oh, okay.
It's just
okay,
the two. It's the two central Wellington bits that came up at council previously.
Do we want to also move an amendment around Johnsonville, or
yeah? If I could speak to that.
Yeah, cool.
Can we handle this one first? So I'm just asking for the leave of the meeting that we agree to take the two traffic resolutions relating to the city to finance and performance on June the 16th.
Councillor Wolf?
Yes.
Councillor Wolf? Could I just suggest that it might be better to have that Barnard Street one as a late paper than not have that other information, because for the community they were confused reading it because they didn't have any understanding of the context. Would probably be better to at least have some of that information in there rather than repeat it, and then we've got submitters coming without that information as well.
We're just going to get some advice from DEM Services. Okay, so the advice is that we're going to take this as an amendment. Yeah, so I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Matthews, thank you. Is there any debate on this? No?
Sorry, Chair, I'm confused. Has the paper been moved and then we're moving an amendment? I don't understand the process.
Yeah, sorry.
We're having to move an amendment to Yeah, okay. So I'm moving the paper. We can't move the amendment without a paper being. So, Councillor Matthews, are you happy to? Yeah. So, yeah. So we're doing that. I'm going to reserve my right to speak just at the moment. I think Councillor Matthews, you'd quite like to do that as well, wouldn't you? And we'll just move on to the amendment that's up on the screen, and there was no debate on that, so I think. Sure.
Apologies. Can we be shared the amendment? Sorry, DEM Services.
Yeah, that's okay. It's coming up.
Could it just be listed as what it is? Sorry, the numbers, but just so it's easy for. Sorry, that's a slight.
Central City increase in parking and yeah.
So I just wanted to make the comment that people do criticise us for not listening, but actually we had some very, very compelling submissions this morning, and then there are other parts of the community that might have some concerns. So it has been given quite a lot of consideration. So I'm glad that can be done, even though it is a ridiculous initiative, and I'm likely to be opposing it when it comes back to committee.
Thank you, Councillor Pennant.
I'd just like to speak to the amendment as well.
Sure.
Just to say thank you. I think it is a good way forward. I think one of the lines we've always been having to walk with regs this term is the fact that we've got this designation for minor traffic resolutions, and sometimes there's this interesting question about what counts as minor. And I think this is a good example of one where it probably, needs to go to a committee of the whole for a number of reasons. I don't think it actually falls under our delegations as minor. So, I always come back to back when we had portfolios and I had the portfolio for traffic resolutions, I made an undertaking to everyone that if we had any concerns that something wasn't minor or something, others who weren't on this committee might have a view, that we would move it to a committee of the whole. And I think that this is consistent with that undertaking that we gave to our colleagues.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Condi. I'd also like to thank officers for their pragmatic approach to this as well. This has shown a lot of teamwork, so thank you. So so we've moved the paper, we've got the amendment on the table, and we're voting on the amendment.
Who moved and seconded the amendment?
Myself and Councillor Matthews. We've done both lots. Yeah.
Sorry, just through you, Chair, was it not an amended substantive?
It's an amended substantive, yep. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, we do need to have it. But we vote on this, though.
Okay.
Oh, we've accepted it as... Okay, thank you. Yep. Okay.
So we don't need to vote on that separately because it's part of the substantive, is that correct?
That's right.
Yep, we've agreed to that. Okay.
Can I speak to the Johnsonville one then? Because we do need
Absolutely.
to change.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, because we do need to change what it says on the Johnsonville one. I'm not quite sure what the wording should be because what we're actually agreeing to is a slight alternative. So we're essentially, I think we're agreeing to the amended traffic resolution as presented by Zach at this meeting, and that which does not require.
I think we've lost you, Councillor Condi, but probably we could deal with this the same way as we just dealt with the other ones.
Yeah, I just don't have. Someone will need to make some wording
and include the amended version in the substantive.
Yes, exactly. That would be my preference.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just going to take a 5-minute adjournment while we word this all up.
I've sent a copy of
I just have one. Oh, Councillor O'Neill, you go.
My debate is just to ask the mover and the seconder if we need to say carried out without loss of car parking. Why is that a bottom line for you in number 4? That's my debate. That's my question. I just don't know why we've got without loss of car parking, why that's a minimum.
Can I speak?
That's a new option, Terry.
Could just actually change that and make it a bit clearer. So it's carried out without loss of car parking while still meeting accessibility standards. That bit there, that's at the end of the sentence, I think should actually go up, just where that comma is.
Brad's going to clear this up.
Okay.
Through you, Chair, what we could do is we could have it as Johnsonville is carried out. We can remove the without loss of car parking and then leave the rest of it the way it is. That probably will clear it up, I think.
Okay.
As long as, Alicia, we also amend the legal descriptions.
No. Sorry.
I'm just noting that we are in debate.
Yeah, we're a bit, but I allowed that because I think that it's important that we're changing things around. We do need officer advice on certain aspects. It might not be true process, but it's fair and reasonable.
Exactly.
Councillor Condi.
Thanks. I don't actually now agree with number 4 and would actually feel the need to move an amendment to that if the wording stayed as it is, because what is in the papers, it has to say without loss of parking, because what's in the papers would lose 1 car parking space. The proposal that we want to agree to is the one that Zach has presented to us today, which is an amended proposal that does not include a loss of car parking space. So in the first instance, that's what we're agreeing to. So that's what it needs to say, is that we're not agreeing to what's in the paper, we're agreeing to what Zach presented to us during the meeting today.
Are we
now, if the noting part is that Zach hasn't had a chance to go out and do a site visit. So there is a very small chance that when they go out to do a site visit, it's a very small chance, but that's what that noting thing is there for, is to say if they get on site and find that what we've agreed to today, which is no parking loss, actually can't be implemented within the spaces available, that we then give them essentially permission to go ahead and implement the changes that include the loss of 1 parking space if required.
Just to interrupt you, and apologies for that, but just have a read of the what's on the screen now. Lucy's just amended that.
Yeah, so as long as so it includes the wording carried out without loss of parking. Yeah. That's the key issue, is just that we're agreeing to the amended plan that Zach showed to us today.
What we've got here is now reasonably sound and in good faith in the spirit that it's been entered into. I think the officers will take that on board, and we now have Councillor Day. Joe.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to see that this approach has been taken with this one. It still doesn't read quite right, just that it says noting if measurements cannot be achieved. It's sort of, I think we all understand what it says, but it's simply, if the process as outlined today doesn't work, then it's going to refer back to the original proposal and the committee accepts that. So I think it's important that we all know that that's what we're agreeing to, even if the wording sort of goes in a roundabout way. But I also just want to thank Councillor Condi for continuing to persevere with the community on this one, because it is, like Tony says, it is ideal if we can not lose car parks, but it's encouraging to hear the community say that they're really behind making sure that we get the accessible car parks right. But actually I'm grateful that people do persevere and see if we can make it work, because we don't have many situations like this where we can potentially come out with something that might be a win-win. So let's keep our fingers crossed and hope that those measurements work. So thanks heaps to Zach for working this through. Really appreciate it. Kia ora.
Thanks.
Actually, sorry, and I'll just speak to the Barnard Street one as well, just to say that I do remember the submissions coming in around that car park, and that actually I think it is quite important that this is a debate that's had by the committee of the whole that did agree to this, because obviously that context was lost a little bit today and through the paper. So I think it gives the rest of the community a chance to respond, which they may not have necessarily understood that they needed to, because they may have felt that their initial submission would have counted, whereas clearly it hasn't quite sustained that impact. So it'll be good to have a full debate on that. Kia ora.
Thanks, Joe. Councillor Pennant.
Thank you. Just really quickly, look, I'm not going to be so petty as to vote against this one in Johnsonville, but I guess I'm just concerned that we still have this argument about losing car parking. Now, in saying that, I am going to vote against the Thorndon one, and I'm historically going to vote for the retention of a car park, and I just want to quickly explain why. Just because I have long been concerned that Tinakori Road it needs massive traffic calming. It shouldn't be a major arterial, it's a community, just like Aro Street, and so obviously we've got some plans in place. Hopefully a 30k speed limit will be put right throughout Thorndon, but until then I'm happy to use car parking as a slight traffic calming mechanism. I think that is the best thing, and that we continue to suggest to people that they shift modes so they don't end up perpetually in traffic jams.
Deputy Mayor Freedom.
It's really fascinating. I will remember that there has been an instance where you voted to keep a car park. It will be very useful. I have a very pragmatic view about car parking. We are taking out a lot of car parking for various reasons, good reasons. However, car parking is a resource that is valued by the community on the whole. And it is, I also remember the debate around Barnard Street. Thank you, Councillor Day, for reminding us, because that was actually quite a situation where there were clearly some very opposing views, and we did have a vote on it, and we actually voted to make the changes we did. And I think it's really appropriate it goes back to a committee of the whole. There are a lot of different perspectives on this one. I have to thank the officers. I always forget to do this, but I really do have to thank the officers for the thorough work that gets done on these traffic resolutions. I'm always impressed that every single submitter gets a personalised response that's clearly had thought put into it, and that often we do actually adjust what is planned in response to issues that get raised through the community submission process. I'll be supporting everything. I think we've worked through the ones that need to go to other committees, and we've worked through understanding some of the reasoning behind these, and I'm very happy to support every single one of these. Thank you.
Is there any other party? I'll just sum up in saying thank you to you all for the positive and constructive debate. I'm just going to mention one little thing before I thank officers. That is that one person can make a change, and a positive change. And this relates to TR 5022 Donald Street, where one correspondent, Sonia Kerman, has been relentless and very constructive in the way that she's put this before us, where we're extending a bus stop time and largely for kids and very much for safety. So yeah, I would encourage people. I was encouraged by this, and I really know the officers did a great job with this as well, in understanding and placing this on the table for us. I'd also like to thank Brad and your team. I personally get really good feedback from on your the way that you conduct yourself and the relationships that you form with our community, and that your team does as well, and that you do listen, as Deputy Mayor Free has stated. The leadership in the transport team is superb at the moment, and I think that is well worth noting. So with that, thanks. If we can just move on to vote, we'll separate Tinakori Road, and we'll vote on that first, and that is TR 5222. It's now 2C. So those in favour, those against? Yeah, thanks, that's carried. And now we'll vote on the rest of them. So you have all those changes in front of you, and we've you should be pretty clear on all those. So councillors, if we can just do the same with all the rest of these traffic resolutions. Fantastic. Thank you very much, councillors. We now move on to the name for the new private right-of-way in Kandala. And then Carleen, are you handling this? Thank you.
Kia ora koutou katoa. It gives me great pleasure to bring this report back to committee following the tabling of the previous report in August. I'm particularly pleased to be able to bring it back during the current triennium and to have the same committee reconsider this name. The name that is recommended is Arakua, and we have undertaken some considerable consultation in this regard. Thank you.
Councillor Day.
Kia ora, thank you, Carleen, for your mahi on this. You'll feel like it's been going on for a long time. I've just got a couple of questions, just given that we did get some names from mana whenua and we haven't gone with those. So the first one was the Te Mata Aho Aronui team consulted at council when we, when we were, I guess, having to take a different pathway.
Mātahoho Aranui have been involved right throughout this process. I've consulted with them regularly and sought guidance.
Okay, thank you. The other thing I wondered was just because a number of the names that came through from mana whenua weren't going to be compatible, what information do we provide for them when we go to them for a name, like if to know that macrons can't be used or that there might be some names that, actually a list of names that have been used. Do we provide anything for them?
Kia ora, Councillor Day. That is something that has become very apparent throughout this particular naming process and something that I will be taking care to bring to consultation going forward. It's become quite clear that we need to be more explicit about the policy and what we're able to consider in view of the policy and the guidelines around, especially the need to pay attention to uniqueness of names throughout the region.
And I guess that's another opportunity too, just to ask you what you're finding with the naming policy, where the difficulties are, because clearly it's not quite working with, our process, that we're kind of having this situation where we kind of know where we're trying to head, but there's obviously some bits in the policy that aren't working. Can you identify any parts that you find particularly tricky?
I feel that the policy does work well. There are process improvements that I'm currently identifying and paying attention to and actively working on and working with Mātahoho Aranui in this regard. The policy itself can be applied fairly equitably and without bias to all of the names that are put before me. I have not identified any changes to the policy that I would implement. Having said that, I'm very open to feedback on how I can improve the policy and the process. And as I say, this is something that I'm continually striving towards. I feel that the work that I have done with Mātahoho Aranui leading up to now has brought to the fore a greater voice for mana whenua, and I'm hopeful that we will be able to continue and strengthen that voice.
Okay, I've just got one more question.
You might not have because we can't hear you. Go, try now.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Technology is great, isn't it? So my question was just around names that are in common use. So obviously in the English language, we have a lot of names that will come up multiple times in communities in different ways. It might be that a library's got the same name as a street, or a park has the same name as a street. It feels like with Te Reo Māori that maybe there's sort of a different view on the usage of names with that. Do you feel that that's sort of coming through?
I think I take my guidance very much from mana whenua in this regard. The names that are proposed are not idly proposed, so we have a much more careful eye to the stories and the appropriateness of the names, and that's not to say that we don't with English names, but and particularly with names that come from mana whenua. And
Cool,
Te Reo
thank you.
Māori. Kia ora.
Cool. Kia ora, thank you.
Thank you both. Is there any other pātai? So we'll move into debate. We'll move the paper. Actually, yeah, I'm happy to move. If I have a second. Councillor Matthews, we've been consistent today.
Councillor O'Neill, let's get her name on the minutes.
Okay, Councillor O'Neill. Okay, is there any debate? No. Oh, Councillor O'Neill.
Sorry, I'm a little bit slow in raising my hand on Zoom at the moment. Yeah, just really briefly wanted to thank Carleen and the team and the amount of work that's gone at the chairs.
Thanks, Terry. We're just not hearing you.
Oh no. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right, I'll try and speak clear and concise. I just wanted to thank our team for all the work that they've done, and at the chair's briefing, it was really excellent to hear the amount of processes our council team has gone through to get from Cobble Street to Arakoa. And I'd also just like to acknowledge the residents who have organised amongst themselves to respond to the survey, and to note that there was no opposition to the name Arakoa, and this is a good result under our naming policy. Cheers.
Thanks, Terry. Jill.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think.
Yes.
Yes, cool. I think the connectivity in that room's not quite so right because I could hear Terry fine.
I apologise for it.
Yeah, no, that's all good. And I also want to acknowledge the mahi of the team. I know it is a complicated process to work through, especially understanding how busy mana whenua are. I do personally think there are some things that do need to be changed with the naming policy. I think there's a bit of a challenge with going to mana whenua and asking if a place is significant and if they want to name it, because of course everything is in degrees, and they're managing a lot on their plate at the moment. So sometimes naming might be quite low down, but it doesn't mean that they don't want a Te Reo Māori name and may have an opinion about it. I also think it's a bit tricky if we ask them for names and then we turn them all down. And, obviously in this, I can see there are logical reasons as to why, but they've gone to the effort to think it up, and it's probably not a great process and it's not the first time we've had to do this, where we've had to say, oh, actually, those ones don't work. I also thought that the suggestion to ara pātaka and that being a problem because of Pātaka Museum in Pūroro was a little bit of a tricky comparison to draw, because in Wellington we have Wakefield Park, Wakefield Street, and there's no confusion between the two, and there'll be many, many more like that. So I think we need to be careful with that, with how we and the same or different use in different places. So I think we do need to have a think about that. Although saying that, I think Te Ara Pātaka probably isn't necessarily, honest, as they acknowledged a small right of way, maybe it wasn't quite where they wanted it to be used. But I do think we need to somehow bring some language expertise into this process to make sure that we are getting this right. And I do appreciate that the developer has brought a language expert in to help them work through it from their perspective. So I want to acknowledge that and also acknowledge the community. Thank you, Lydia, for your submission today. It's good to have the community so accepting, embrace, and actually wanting to embrace Te Reo Māori, and can see that it will, enhance the community, which is really awesome. So I think, overall, I think we've come out with a good outcome here. But yeah, I think we do need to have a wee bit of a look at the policy. It's not major things, it's some tweaks, but it would just mean the process works for everybody, and particularly for our staff, actually, rather than having to go backwards and forwards lots. If we can make that work, that would be good. So kia ora koutou.
Thanks, Jill. You've stolen the thunder of most of us, I think. I would just like to just reiterate that this is a very beautiful name, and Carleen, you said that you were pleased. I think you should be pleased and proud because of the process that you've taken through. You've led people through this. I'd also endorse Councillor Day's appreciation of Lydia's involvement. And Lydia, thank you for sitting through this meeting. This is probably one of the longest regs meetings that we've ever had, and it's nice to have seen your smiling face throughout. So thank you. So yeah, I think we'll just, if there's no further partai, we'll just vote. Thank you, everyone. And we've just got two last papers to move and to second, and we're going to do those in block, and that's the forward planning and the action tracking. So if I could just ask, taken as read, seconded. All in favour? We're a bit too quick for the officers. Sorry, guys. And that's and just concluding the meeting. Normally we would have Letitia here, but and we don't because she's not 100%. I'd like to thank Elise for stepping in, and also for Terry and Jenny for stepping in on the pre-meeting when I was not well. It hasn't been the easiest of meetings to get round, so I think we've handled it really, really well. Just another thank you to officers. Heidi, thank you for your advice. And Liam and the other officers that were here, and we'll end with the karakia. Una here.
Atia, kia mama,
Kia māku. I te arata koe rā I ongo whakaria. Kia wātia, kia wātia, ara wātia. Thank you, everyone.